welcome. I love the conversation around the table. You guys can continue that after we're done here. But hey, my name is Derek Wong. I'm the regional director for Lynx Players. You guys see our logo up there. But anyway, thank you for a lot of you that are here. This is our 16th year that we've done this, and it's just been great to see everybody coming and attending this. First of all, I really would like to thank the staff. Do you guys like the dessert? Yeah. And of course, our generous host is Kevin and Devin Martin. Thank you again for all that you guys do for us. Beautiful facility here. So you guys are in for a treat tonight. And again, if you can, do me a favor, put your phone on silent or, you know, that mode there. And but again, we're blessed to have this event. And a good friend of mine has been, believe it or not, we just had dinner last night, on the PGA Tour and now Champions Tour Chaplain, 45 years. You know, so I'm going to introduce to you our Master of Ceremony, Larry Moody. Give him a warm welcome, Orange County. Oh, do your whistle, by the way, you know? Come on now.
When the guys get birdies, I give them the birdie train. I guess I'm sitting at this seat because I got the mic for that seat, so I'm moving. What a privilege to be with you again. Thank you, Martins, for your gracious hosting of us. This is so much fun to be here, very, very much. It's my privilege to introduce these three men, dear friends. The first one I'm going to introduce to you is the most recent winner out of this group of a major champion. His name is Doug Barron. Douglas, come on up. 3 wins since he returned to golf. My man Doug got away from golf for a few years, was frustrated by it, came back on the first week he could play again at a 50-year-old, won the first time he's back in the States, and has won 3 times out here and won his first major at the region's tradition in Birmingham last year. So welcome, Doug Barron. You can sit. All right. Next is Stewart Cink. Won 8 times on the regular tour, won the 2009 Open, they call it. We call it the British Open, but they call it the Open, and has won the Allied Challenge out here on the Champions Tour. He was doing so good on the regular tour, he waited till he was 52 to join us regularly. We're welcome Stewart Cink. Next is a rather quiet guy most of you would not know. His name is Bernhard Langer from Germany. He's won the Masters twice in 85 and 93, and until this last year held a record as the only person who's won the Masters and then won the next week at Hilton Head till that little Scotty Scheffler went and did it this past year. So since 1985, he's held that record till Scotty beat him this year. Bernhard has won 47 times out here on the Champions Tour, more than anyone, 12 majors on the Champions Tour. Welcome, Bernhard Langer. Let's go ahead and sit, guys. Why don't we go ahead and I'll just ask you, about your family. Tell us about your family and where you currently live.
I live in Memphis, Tennessee, Germantown, Tennessee. I just say Memphis. Everyone knows that. And I'm married to my wonderful wife, Leslie, over there, 28 years. And we have
sweet lady, let me tell you.
We have 2 sons, Buzz, we call him Buzz, and Wiley. Buzz is 24, Wiley's 18. My oldest son serves in the military, which makes me always really proud. Yep. And that's about it. We don't have any grandkids yet, so we're
well, and that's okay.
That's right. We're glad at this point.
I can tell you, after after having 10 of them. We have 10, and they still will live within 10 miles, except the oldest, he's journeyed to Atlanta. And it is really fun, but it is really exhausting with the little ones when you're 77. Stewart, tell us about your family.
Sure thing. My wife Lisa's not here. She's coming in tomorrow, but we live in Atlanta. I grew up in Alabama, actually only about 100 miles from him, just up there by Memphis. And our kids are, with 2 boys, are 31 and 27. We've got 1 grandchild, but we got 2 on the way right now. So our family's growing, and yeah, we love it.
2 in the same womb or different wombs?
No, each of our sons' wives are having their next
I
ones,
knew
yes.
you were curious. That's why I asked. Go ahead, Bernie.
We live in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm married to a girl from Louisiana by the name of Vicky, 41 years. We've been married. Yep. And we've been blessed with 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. They're all adults now, ranging from 38 down to 25. And we have 4 grandkids, and I agree with Larry. They are exhausting, but there's nothing more fun than playing with the grandkids. It's awesome, and that's what I mostly do when I'm home now for weeks off.
Yeah, that's great. Let's start with you, Bernhard, and we'll go back this way. What got you interested in golf, and when did you start?
What got me interested is my brother came home. He's 5 years old, and he had some Deutschmarks in his pocket. I grew up in Munich, Germany. And I go, where did you earn that money from? And he was like 14 years old, and I was 9. And he goes, I went caddying today. And I go, really? What is that? So golf was not a big game, no clue. Most Germans had no idea, and neither did I. Anyways, I fell in love with money, so I wanted to earn money as a 9-year-old, like my older brother, and that got me into caddying. And we were allowed to hit balls and practice as a caddy if there were no members to work for, and chip and putt and all that. And I immediately got hooked on the game of golf. It was fascinating. I always enjoyed sports, and so every day after school I would ride my bicycle for 5 miles to the golf course, hopefully make a few Deutschmarks, play a little golf, and then go back home and do it all over again the next day. So
Well, tell us how many clubs you started with, Bernie.
Yeah, there were about 8 caddies. It was only a 9-hole golf course, and we couldn't afford any clubs. So one member decided to give us some clubs that he discarded, and they were all bamboo shafts, so I'm giving away my age now. And it was a 2-wood, 3-iron, a 7-iron, and a putter with a bent shaft. So now you understand where my putting problems came from.
Stewart, how about you?
Well, I played a lot of sports, and my favorite probably was soccer, though. I love soccer, and I love scoring goals and passing. I was a forward. And when I was 14, I reported to the preseason practice, and I was pretty short, too, back then. I was not tall. And when I got to practice, the coach said, Cink, you're on defense. You're too fat. Ooh. Seriously. So I played 1 year of defense as a fat person, and scored 0 goals, 0 assists. Actually, was okay at defending, but I hated it. And so you can probably imagine in my condition at the time, the other sport I played, basketball, wasn't really in the cards either. So golf just was like the default. It was the only one left out of the other ones. So I played golf, and I was already a pretty good golfer, to be honest. So I was okay with that. And then right after that, I got tall and skinny.
That's good. How about you, Dougie?
My father built a house on a golf course in Germantown, Tennessee when I was 3 years old, and by the time I was 7 or 8, we were lucky. We had an 18-hole par 3 course, and we had 2 18-hole golf courses. So by the time I was 8 years old, I was never around the house. I would walk up and play the par 3 because I wasn't old enough to necessarily play on the big course, is what they called it back then. So I would literally just live out there all day. And so my parents kind of knew where I was. I stayed out of trouble. But by the time I was 10, I was the youngest of the group of kids that played at our club. They called us the Yard Apes. There was about 15 of us that ranged from, starting at my age, 11 or 12, up to 16. And so I was always the youngest one, and that's what helped me get better, but it helped me love the game, too. So it's cool.
Terrific. Yep. How'd you get to the PGA Tour?
Oh, man. I played, my college career was, after I left LSU, kind of went downhill real quick, so I had to work really hard. I played what was called the Hooters Tour for 2 years. Back then, that was a big tour. There was like 168 people. I don't think Stewart ever had to play it, but I made 18 straight cuts the second year I played it, and that was kind of a big deal. And in 1994, I got on the Nike Tour, and in 95, I didn't keep my car, but I got back on the Nike Tour. I believe Stewart won the money list that year, and I made it through the Q School and finished third, or in 96, excuse me. And so 1997 was my rookie year on tour. I finished third in the Q School.
And I know you walked away from golf, but let's talk about turning 50. And I probably ought to let Leslie tell this story, but I'm not going to. Tell us why you decided to come back and give it a run, because you've had a great run.
Yeah, so I think I fired myself when I was 42, I believe. Is that about right, honey? So, and I never had the intention of playing golf again. I'd kind of gone out not the way you wanted to, but I was enjoying teaching, and I was home playing a lot of tennis after work and being with the family. But when I got to be about 48, I started playing really well, and I was like, man, I've got to try this. I prayed about it, decided to go just play some mini tour events down in the Florida Panhandle, and it took me about 6 months to get my game back because I haven't really played competitively in 6 or 7 years. And I won 3 out of 5 tournaments going into turning 50 against these young kids. So I was only playing against about 20 to 30 of them, but still I learned how to win again, and that was cool. So I came home one day and I go, Leslie, I think I just looked on the schedule, and on the Wednesday of the Senior British Open, I turned 50, so that would make me eligible to go over and play. I had to go Monday qualify, but my justification was that. I said, Brandel Chamblee doesn't even play golf anymore, and he qualifies. I said, so it can't be that hard. So I said, I'm going over to play. And lo and behold, with 4 holes to go, I was tied with the guy on the end down there. And but I told Stewart earlier, the practice round that week at Royal Lytham, it was good to be back with my peers, but I've never been so nervous as the practice round where Dickie Pride and I played Joe Durant and Scott Perrell, because, just being out and doing it with the guys you played with all those years, it was so cool. But it was a magical week. I got to, it was Tom Watson's, we'll get to that, I'm sure, with Stewart, but it was Tom Watson's last Senior Open, and he was one of my heroes growing up, so I got my picture made with him. And then obviously, Bernhard and I weren't playing together that final round, but the nerves finally got to me, and I ended up finishing 5th in the dark. But it was a cool start, cool start to my career.
Yep, that's how he came back. Yeah. And he won when he came back to America, the Dick's Sporting Goods tournament, the next tournament. So tell us a little bit about getting into golf on the tour. And why did you wait so long to come to us? No, go ahead.
I have been looking forward to being with you, Larry. No, I got started after the soccer thing. That, kind of went by, thank goodness. But I just, I never really saw myself as like I'm going to the PGA Tour. That just wasn't me. I came from sort of a suppressive environment in my little town, and just not a lot of optimism, and a lot of people telling me, like nobody really makes it in golf, and I was like, well, I don't really care. I'm not trying to make it. I'm trying to get a little bit better at golf every day, and just be a little bit better than my peers. And in your junior golf days, when you're 14, when you're 15, you're just playing against those kids that are your age, and I was kind of rising to the top, and then pretty soon I thought, well, maybe college is in the future, So Georgia Tech ended up in my future with a college scholarship, and it got me out of town, and then I got to compare myself to other kids in a bigger pond, and I just felt myself, trying to achieve a little bit at each level, and before I knew it, I was playing pretty well against the pros early on, and I ended up Doug said, we ended up having the same rookie year. We got there slightly different ways, but he came through the Q School, and I came through the what now is the Korn Ferry Tour. And, you know, boom, PGA Tour. And it's a pretty hard bunch to be the best at. They're really good at golf, as I found out. So, but, you know, it was a great run on the PGA Tour for me, 27 straight seasons, and some wins in there. And I got my picture made with Watson, too, back in '09 a couple of times. And so I love playing golf. You know, that's my greatest asset right now as a golfer, is that I just still love playing and practicing and preparing, and, you know, getting to a new course like Newport Beach Country Club. Never seen it before until yesterday. It's just such a neat place it's like a puzzle to figure out, and I love doing it. And so it keeps me going, and it's pretty good out.
Well, before we get to Bernhard, since you already mentioned his name, let's talk about the 2009 against Tom Watson.
What do you want to know?
Well, tell me what the crowd reaction was when you beat him.
I don't care what the crowd reaction was, because I already had 3 or 4 people tonight here tell me the exact same. 3 or 4 people tonight already told me what they felt about it, and I told them the same thing too.
Well, you told me one time you had 4 or 5 family members there, and I asked you, what was it like having 5 family members there, including your dad, rooting for you when everybody else was rooting for Tom Watson, and you said?
I don't think my dad was rooting for me. Well, I will tell you a funny story. I mean, it was a golf tournament, and it was a playoff, and I ended up winning, that's the factual stuff. But I'm very friendly with a lot of the golfers, as these 2 guys are too, and you and Ruthie are. And in the playoff, I looked out in the crowd, you know, just kind of scanning in between shots to keep my mind occupied, and I saw Justin Leonard, who was one of my great friends, and I saw Tom Lehman, who was one of my great friends. And just for a second there, I let my mind think that they were out there to watch me. Just for a second. And then it occurred to me, like, hang on. They're out here to watch Watson. They want to say they were at the playoff when Watson won it all. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. So they're still my friends.
Bernie, how about you? When was your first into golf? I know it wasn't on the PGA Tour. It was on the European Tour, but...
I turned pro very young. I was 15. Turned teaching pro, assistant pro for 3 years. Learned to trade, to give lessons, run the club, do the pro shop and all that kind of stuff. And then was able to win the German close championship, they call it, when I was 17. And some guy from Cologne came to me and said, if you ever want to go on tour, I'll try and help you financially if you're interested. And I said, absolutely, but I got 1 more year to go with this apprenticeship, and then maybe we can talk then. And so we did. Turned 18, got my diploma as a head professional, and decided to join the European Tour. Bought a little Ford Escort, drove 2,500 miles to Portugal, where the first kilometers, not miles, where the first European Tour stop was in 1976. And my thought was, I'm going to give this 2 or 3 years on the European Tour and see if I can make a living. If not, I'm going to go back to teaching golf. And it turned out, I could make a living. I was finished 56 in the money list. In those days, we actually had 2 cuts. We had to Monday qualify, and then you had a cut on Friday and another cut on Saturday. And if you made both cuts, then you got paid. And you were immediately exempt into the next week because you couldn't make it finishing Sunday evening and then having to Monday qualify. So that's how I got into a bunch of tournaments, by making the cut of both cuts, and got into the next week and the next week, and raked up some, prize money, as little as it was in those days, but enough to make a living anyways. And a couple of years later, I won my first tournament, and I was #1 on the European Tour in 1981, won the money list, and that got me some invitations to come over here, including to the Masters and couple of Florida events showed interest. Was managed by Mark McCormack, IMG. And so that was my introduction to the PGA Tour. 3 years later, I was fortunate enough to win my first Masters, and that got me a 10-year exemption on the PGA Tour. What many people don't know is there was 1989, there was 12 Europeans who had a meeting with Dean Beeman, and we wanted them to lower the minimum tournaments from 15 to maybe 12, because we all felt like we wanted to play in Europe, support our own tour, and having to play 15 in America was just too much back and forth. And Beeman didn't flinch, or the committee didn't flinch, and 12 of us handed in our tour card, all at the same time. You would never do that nowadays, right? Or very unlikely. I mean, people fight and practice their lifelong to get onto the tour, and we said, no, thank you. We'll go back to Europe, and we'll just get a couple of sponsor invites.
Wow. How about that? That's not on the front page of the American papers. Most nervous you've ever been, Bernie?
Definitely the Ryder Cup, no doubt about it. I wasn't used to team sport. I was never an amateur golfer, never had a handicap, never played tournaments as an amateur. I was just caddy and then pro. And in the professional game, there are hardly any team events. And so to make the Ryder Cup team and represent Europe and the country and, the whole tour was almost overwhelming. It was just really, shaking in my knees and having a hard time breathing, the whole thing. It was just a unique experience. And my first one, it was in Walton Heath, 1981, and we probably played, I think, against the best American team ever. I've played in 10 of them, so I know a little bit about it. They were just incredible, that team was, and they just drummed us. Sandy Lyle was, for instance, 7 under through 16 holes, and he lost 3 and 2. So just shows you how good the Americans played.
Woo. Wow. That's the last time we played that good in Europe, I'll tell you that. How about you? Most nervous?
For sure, Ryder Cup, too. My first shot in the Ryder Cup is something I'll never forget. And it got delayed by about 5 minutes because I was an alternate shot with Jim Furyk. And we'd practiced for 3 straight days coming up with a plan on who's going to play the evens and the odd holes, right? And I was the odd holes at the Belfry. And you were on the team in 2002? Yes. So I didn't play against you in a match, I don't think, but we get to and I sit out the first match, my first Ryder Cup, and, in the morning, I'm just like, oh my gosh, can we please get started? I'm just panicking. And I'm supposed to hit the first tee, and we were on the putting green, and I hear the crowd from the first tee, and this is 20-something years ago. It's not like it is now. I mean, it was big, but it's insane now. And I just couldn't deal with the crowd, so I went to Jim Furyk and said, I know we've practiced for 3 straight days on this, but you're hitting the first shot. And he's like, all right, no problem. I mean, he was accommodating, and he hit it down the fairway, and so my first shot was an 8-iron from the fairway.
All that strategy went out the window.
How about you, Dougie? Most nervous?
Well, I was never fortunate enough to reach a Ryder Cup or President's Cup. There was different pressures. Like I was leading a tournament that this gentleman won in 1987, going into the final round. I've never been so nervous. I shot 40 on the front 9. I'm like, it was a great learning experience. Stewart ended up winning the tournament. We were both rookies, but I did come back and shoot 32 on the back. But same thing, when you're a rookie on tour and you get in a lead, it's not like some of the kids today that are like ready to win. We kind of had to work our way up and get to that stage. But Stewart was fortunate enough to win his rookie year. But I led that tournament, was in the final group that day, and I'll never forget, I couldn't get my hands to calm down. I was like, so anyways, but keeping your card on the PGA Tour for me is where I got some of the most nervous. I can remember some weeks if I could just make the cut, I could lock my card up for the year. So you know, that's the pressure of your life. You know, you lose your job. And so I remember shooting 29 on the back nine at Kingsmill when I needed to make a cut in the second round. And it was one of the coolest 9 holes I've ever played. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And so there's different pressures. Obviously, I would love to have played Ryder Cup and President's Cup. I watch them every time, but there's different people had different pressures in their lives at different times. So, anyways.
You shot that 29 because you wanted to go ride the Loch Ness Monster. I know you, buddy. Funniest story that you think of and playing on either tour, Champions or this one?
Not even close. My birthday and about, we used to play the John Deere. What was the name of the course we played before? Oakwood. And I got paired with Fuzzy Zeller on a Saturday morning.
Oh, boy.
And I'm on about the 10th hole. We were probably 4th or 5th group off, and Fuzzy, I found out it was my birthday. Hey, Dougie, happy birthday. And he handed me his drink, and it was a Jack and Coke. And I was like, Fuzzy was having a good time that day. But man, that guy could strike a golf ball. But he's one of a kind. I love that man every time. I wish he was still out here. I think he's 75 now. But man, what a treat to always be around. So that one just sticks out in my mind really quick.
How about you, Stewart?
Well, actually pretty recently, Matt Wolff is a golfer. He plays live golf now, but he came out on the PGA Tour and he was kind of a hot shot early on, and I think he had some well-documented and self-admitted like mental struggles with golf, and like we all do, I think, right? So I was with my son who caddied for me for a few years, and Matt Wolff is a really young player, and we're in Memphis at a pretty big tournament. Yep, and small field, big purse, you know, it's kind of the elite crowd there, and we're on the 9th hole, and I'm playing with Matt Wolff. This is like the 3rd round, and he hits down the fairway, and I hit a little right down the right rough. And we're walking off the tee, and Matt Wolff just stops and turns around and looks at me like, I got something to say to you. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And he says, I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time. And he starts talking to me about his struggles right off the tee. I mean, no, this is not a joke. This is not the funny part. Not a funny part. So he starts telling me, like, how do you handle it, like the ups and downs out here, and just oh my gosh, it was like he opened the door for me to talk to him about like some of my experiences, and I like, without touching him, it's pretty hot and humid. I was like, man, and I started telling him. So we walked 50 yards down the fairway, you know, and I'm like, you know, Matt, just, you know, anyway, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is 50 yards down the fairway, a marshal comes kind of walking back at us and says, who is down the right side? And I was like, well, that was me. He said, it hit a tree and went out of bounds. And the OB stakes are 30 yards right, at least 30 yards. This ball was nowhere near out of bounds. And so what do? I got my son caddying, and I got Matt Wolff, the young player, asking this veteran, like, how do you handle this stuff? I lost it. How can that ball end up, you know, give me a provisional. I'm going back to the tee. Get a rules of, I just melted down.
That's pretty good.
That's funny.
Matt Wolff, I think he just like sprinted away from me. He was so scared.
Bernie?
I'm still mad about it.
Probably for me was my first year on the European tour, and I didn't have any money, so I was always looking for a guy to share the hotel room with to split the cost. So on this particular occasion, it was the Dutch Open in Sanford, and all of a sudden this guy comes over and introduces himself, says, I'm Simon Hopday from South Africa. I heard you're looking for a roommate for Holland. I said, yes, I am. He goes, I'll be your roommate if that's okay with you. I said, sure, here's the hotel, here's the address. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. So I'm in this room, and Simon comes a day later and comes through the door with his, golf bag, and actually was dragging it this way, and suitcase and duffel bag and shack bag and whatever. He just arrived from the airport. And first thing he says is, Bernhard, do we have a shower or a tub? And I'm going, I can't remember. I just got in last night. Why don't you have a look? So bathroom is right there. He goes in and says, oh, we got both. I go, okay, who cares, kind of thing. And so I hear him run the bathtub. He's running the water. And I'm saying, okay, well, maybe he's taking a bath or whatever. But then he comes back and pulls in the whole suitcase, drags it into the little bathroom. I'm going, what's he doing in there? Is he very modest? He doesn't want me to see him in his underwear or whatever before he takes it. Anyways, I see him now. I'm interested, so I'm peeking around the corner a bit. He takes the whole suitcase and dumps everything he owns. He's on the road for 7 weeks. So it's cashmere, it's white, it's black, it's orange, it's green. Everything in the bathtub. Then he comes over and unwraps the soap, the bar of soap that was still had wrapper around it, throws it in there, stops the water from running, comes back out, unzips the golf bag, was still in the cover, so he unzips it and goes in there, pulls the 1-iron out, goes back in, goes like this.
That's called an agitator.
And he comes out of the bathroom with the biggest grin and says, that's my laundry done for the week. And
Where did he hang it all? That's what I want to know.
no idea. I didn't want to know. I just got out of the room, but I was thinking, what did I get myself into?
Hey, Larry, I know we're here to talk about Jesus tonight, but could you tell one more Simon Hobday story? Just tell the one about the sombrero, the hat, and I'll let you go off that one.
All right. Well, there's a few Simon Hobday stories, as you can imagine. But I tell the one that he's setting the alarm, to have an early tea time in Scottsdale, and he sleeps through the alarm, and wakes up a few minutes later and looks at the clock and goes, oh my gosh, I got like 28 minutes to make my tea time. So he just puts clothes on in the car, and there's this long road, Pima Road up the hill. I think speed limit is 40, 45. He's going 75, 85, whatever he can to make his tea time. And he's 50 yards away from the exit into the golf course off this Pima Road, and cop gets him, and a siren went off, pulled him over, and he goes, oh, now I'm done. So the cop walks over to him, he rolls the window down, and the officer almost had a smile on his face. Said, I've been waiting for you all day, son. Like that kind of attitude. And Simon says, well, officer, I got here as fast as I could.
Highest point in golf for you so far? You got lots of them, Bernie, but let's just go back down. Just give it one of the highlights, really highlights.
Well, you all know about the Masters. Obviously, those were the most meaningful victories, and it put you at a different level as a major champion, and you're always introduced on the first tee from that day on as the Masters champion. But I'm going to surprise you a little bit. I'm going to say the PNC Father-Son Tournament. Yep.
You've won 6. Which one?
Yeah, they were all special. It's just a great family event to be with your kids inside the ropes and play with other major champions like Stewart and many others. And, this year we were paired with Tiger Woods and Charlie, his son. Was very special for my son to have the opportunity to play with Tiger, against Tiger and Charlie, and be on national television and all that is pretty cool.
I would agree. That's a pretty special one. It was kind of a little bit like yours, though, Stewart. Ruthie and I were watching on Pins and Needles, and we counted all 3 people that clapped for Bernhard and his son when he made that putt. and the TV doesn't know what to do with that. Tiger was as gracious and as wonderful and was so complimentary of you. I give Tiger enormous credit for the way he handled it, the way some of the crowd were reacting, and even when you accepted it. We know that most of you weren't expecting my son and I, Jason, to be holding this. You expected it to be Tiger and his son, and it was
No,
pretty special.
He handled it very well, and so did Charlie. It was really special. But I felt bad for the tournament, literally, because everybody wanted Tiger to win and have them, as their defending champion and all that kind of stuff. I understand.
Yep, you do. Which Ryder Cup meant the most to you, Bernhard? Any?
As a player, probably my last one, 2002, the one you were in, I guess, as well. I was undefeated. Well, we didn't play each other, but I was undefeated that year, and I was already 46 years old, something like that. So it was pretty meaningful, that one. And then 2 years later, I was the captain in Oakland Hills, Detroit.
How'd you guys do in that tournament?
Yeah, well, you don't want to know, right?
Yeah, I do.
do.
I was there. What was wonderful is he and Hal Sutton put together a little pamphlet that talked about what it was like to be a captain and also what it meant in their own relationship with God. And we passed out 50,000 of them Sunday. My wife and I went around to the 5 entrances and exits, collected 12 that were thrown away. That was a pretty special time. For you, Hal, I mean, as Americans, we suffered a great deal, and I got chewed out royally by his daughter. We had stayed in the Langer family house. He stayed with the team. She calls him at a team meeting, wants him to come home. He comes home, wants to know why. She says, Dad, you got to throw him out of the house. He and Ruthie, they go out in red, white, and blue every day. They don't come out in the blue. Throw him out. He had to explain to her it was okay, we were Americans, to wear the red, white, and blue. Stewart, most meaningful Ryder Cup for you?
The most meaningful Ryder Cup? Well, I played in 5, and we only won 1 as a team, so that was an incredible experience to win as a team. You just don't get to do that very often in this profession. So that was in Louisville in 2008 for Zinger. That was awesome. My most meaningful match will never mean anything in history because I went out second maybe when our team needed a big boost on Sunday in Ireland, K Club, and I had Sergio, who was kind of like the head of the Dragon on their team back in those days, 2006. And I went out and played probably the best I've ever played for one round of golf. It was only a 14-hole round, but I was like 8 or 9 under through 14 holes, and it was ridiculous. And to win that when our team needed it, and then our team didn't do anything with it. But it meant a lot to me, dang it. We got smoked. That was during a time when we were really getting smoked. We were losing the Ryder Cup right now, especially in Europe, but really we were getting smoked then. 2004 was, you guys just
2004 was the most we've ever lost by when Bernhard was the captain.
That was not close.
I was kind of excited for him.
Larry,
not
I was in the
for...
last singles match that Sunday. The Ryder Cup finished when I was on number 4. Play it out, gentlemen. Talk about like an antiquated, like anticlimactic, I guess is the right word for that. Wow.
I think one of the great stories, Dougie, is you come back from the British Open, the Open, Senior Open, and you can't just go qualify Monday for the Dick's Sporting Goods. Tell them what you had to do.
So when I was out of the game, I gave up my tour membership. And when I decided to teach at TPC Southwind, and then the reason my general manager said, well, really in the bylaws, they have to charge you this percentage. He gave me this sweetheart deal, and he just didn't want to have any more controversy. I don't know if you know, but I've had to sue the PGA Tour before, and we just didn't want to wanted to do everything right. So I had to after I finished 5th in the senior British, that doesn't get you into the next tournament. Like our majors, you can't top 10 into a normal tournament. So I had to go back and pre-qualify. Played with a guy that shot 56 on 9 holes. I'm not lying. I won that, then I had to qualify. And then, and I was going to say this was my most meaningful moment anyways, because then I led the tournament start to finish. But the last day, I saw Larry Saturday night and basically just cried because I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I had to go back and finish 3 holes, then come back to my hotel, and then start over. And I was so nervous on the first hole, leading at Enjoy Country Club, where we've all used to be the BC Open on the PGA Tour. We're all familiar with the course. But I told McCarron the other day, Scott McCarron, I was so nervous. All you need is about a 230 shot, but the only club I knew I could hit straight was driver. So I just took my driver out and I hit it right in front of the green, literally 30 yards off the green. And I kind of set the tone for the day because I was like, oh, well, this may not be so bad. But we got to the 15th hole, which is the hardest driving hole, and I hit my tee ball and the horn went off again. So I played 3 holes that morning, gone back to my hotel, packed up, and with three and a half holes to go, I was tied with Freddie Couples, who had posted a 63. And we,
9 under.
Yeah, and we had a cart out there because we knew the bad weather was coming in. So I on the way in, after I hit that perfect tee ball, I called my wife, and I was almost in tears, but I go, honey, I've got this. For the first time in my life, I think I can do this. And so we had an hour and 45-minute rain delay, and I just remember seeing Jay Haas in the locker room, and I just kind of hung with him because I didn't think anybody would screw with me if I was around him, So I hung around Jay, and I was in the little locker room where Freddie was. He was just hanging out in case I messed up coming in. But I went back out 2 hours later, or hour and 45 minutes later, and I hit a really nice wedge and made the putt to go 1 up. And I can drive the next green. I drove it right up 10 feet off the green, and I didn't make birdie. And I'm like, oh, wow, I thought I would have put it away. And then the next hole, I hit 5-iron and made a 15-footer. So I really did do what I told my wife I was going to do for the first time. And my funny thing, people know me for talking a lot. When I hit my 8-iron on the 18th hole, I still don't know what I said, honey. But I said that's it, and it was very emotional. I didn't have the same route out here as they did. I didn't have the career money to be exempt, and I wouldn't have had the opportunities to come here and talk about Jesus or have all these other great opportunities. If it wasn't for that one moment, that 1 week, that was just a most magical week of my life, basically.
Yeah, he's done pretty well with it since then. Since you brought up Jesus a second time now, let's just talk about. I agree. Let's share about how God enters into what you guys do, and why don't we just start with you, Dougie?
Sure. I've had a tough road with Jesus. Me and him have gone back and forth 3 years. I became a believer later in life. I was 26 years old, a year before I got married to my wife. She's been a believer for a while, but it took me a while to get there. And it took me a long time to even get a little farther. But these days, golf's not so important like it used to be. I used to be really hard on myself. I was that guy that beat myself up. There's no way you could succeed. That's the truth. I was really tough on myself. My wife had to endure a lot of that, and it was tough. And these days, I'm still really on a 1-year contract, even though I won a major last year. I'm in a few tournaments for 5 years, but God's given me a spirit of just, hey, Doug, go out and be aggressive and play great every week. And I told Larry when I won Dick's, every time that I get asked to go talk to Jesus, I have to go do it. I had to decline him for next week will be the first time. I hope he gives me a thing. But I love to talk about how the Lord's worked in my life because it's not always been just smiles and giggles. God's put me through a lot. He's helped me look in the mirror. He's made me look in the mirror and realize I didn't like what I saw at times. And he's made me change. And I give him credit for everything I've done. If my wife would have left me 15 or 18 years ago like I thought she was, there's no way I would be sitting here talking about golf right now. I've had so many, God's blessed me in so many ways. He's kept He's let me be a father and let me keep my family, and he's let me win, which has been cool. But I've just been so blessed in so many ways with golf. I try not to take myself very seriously anymore. I'm going to play golf as good as I can for as long as this body will hold up, and just keep smiling. And I try to find joy, and that's kind of my motto. It doesn't always work, but I try to find joy in something every day. That's what we talk about all the time. So that being said, I have a good time on the golf course. If you see me during the tournament, a lot of times I still have a temper too. So anyways, we're not perfect. So, but it's been a great journey. This second,
It's called a journey for a reason, buddy.
Second chance at life out at golf's been it's been a big learning experience with God. So I've learned a lot.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Stewart?
I think, Larry, for me, it really comes down to coming to terms with my own brokenness and just how, like, unable I am to handle sin and temptation and just being an overall schmuck. And to me, that's what the story of the Bible is all about. Like, I think the Old Testament is really about us. It's God's way of telling us, like, you guys stink. You guys stink, and you can't handle all this stuff, and so I'm going to rescue you out of it. That's why he sent his son. When I first understood that Jesus came to save, basically take my place and handle my own sin for me and basically give me a hall pass for it, that's when my life changed, and I became a new person. And you know what the secondary effect was? Is that I'm playing golf as a professional. Now, I was 26. You said you were 26. I was also 26. And when you play golf as a pro, and I'm sure any of you out there who have ever played golf can identify with this, or any of you who have ever had jobs or been parents or anything else that's a little unpredictable, you just can't depend on those results. But you think when you go out, you're going to be able to depend on that for like your self-worth, right? Your kids, your family, all those things. You think you've got it, and then what happens if it goes? It's not dependable. And in Christ, God gives us something, a part of himself that's dependable, that never changes. And I don't think Tim Keller said this, but he's probably quoting somebody, but love of the immutable is what we're after. Are we loving mutable things? Am I like fretting over a 4-foot putt or a fairway? Are we loving mutable things? It's love of the immutable, things that will not change. That is where your peace can be found. And when I learned that Christ came to save me from something I couldn't save myself from, that was the beginning of my road to peace. And it's translated onto the golf course in an amazing way, because now I still play great sometimes, and I still throw shots away sometimes like you wouldn't believe. It's feast or famine, like all of us experience. But one thing that I don't ever have to starve from is the love that Christ gives me and the peace that I have in my heart from him.
Bernie?
Couldn't say it any better. Well, I grew up in a very religious home. Went to church every day before school and confession and on and on. Was very religious, but had no idea that I could have a personal relationship with Jesus. Tried to live a good life, tried to earn my way to heaven, till I later found out that you can't do that. Bible says no one is good enough to earn their way there by themselves. And I remember winning my first Masters, and I had everything. I just got married to a beautiful young lady. I had money, I had cars, I had houses. I was #1 in the world rankings. Anything and everything a 27-year-old man could literally dream of, I pretty much had it. But I felt empty, totally empty. I had this void inside myself, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And, till I got invited to the Bible study 3 days later and heard that I had to be born again. I'm going, born again? What is that? Can't be born again. I'm 27 years old. So anyways, Larry explained all that to me and bought my own Bible and So I went back to the Bible studies and asked questions, studied it, and then it became very clear that that's missing. And the day I gave my life over to Jesus is the day that emptiness left me, and it's been 40 years and it hasn't returned, and I know it will not return. So, yeah, that's a small tidbit of my spiritual journey. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah. Since you brought up that term, Bernhard, of being born again, let me just say it's the only time Jesus ever used it, and he used it with a religious man, a man who thought he was keeping the law perfectly. And Jesus told him you have to have a physical birth, but the born again is a spiritual birth. The one is just like first thing Bernhard asked me after we were in John 3, we were working our way through the Gospel of John in the Bible study. He says, does it say born again in all the Bibles? I said, well, go to your hotel room, pull the drawer out, get your Gideon Bible and look. It says it in all of them. But he didn't understand the term as fully. He said, my mom, she's 5'2", 5'3", I'm 5'9". How do you get born again? I said, well, it's not talking about another physical birth. It's talking about a spiritual birth. When he's talking to the Samaritan woman, a few days later, he talks about drinking from the living water from which you will never have thirst, which is exactly what you said happened to you, that emptiness you were trying to fill with money and possessions and all of that. And it was still there, that emptiness. That emptiness disappeared when it was the Lord himself that filled that emptiness, and you've not. And I've heard Bernhard, and I'll tell you, you all do not know him. I have known him for 40 years. We've skied all over the world together, and he is a scratch skier, let me tell you. But I can tell you this, that he is not lying. I have watched this man live through missing a putt at the War by the Shore at Kiowa Island. I called him in Germany 2 days after he lost the Ryder Cup from a 6-foot putt that had a spike mark that he had to go around, which was part of the reason he missed it. And I said, Bernhard, how are you doing? He said, well, yesterday was pretty rough. He says, but I realized there's only been one perfect man, and they crucified him. He says, I think I'm going to be okay. He's in the German Masters. He gets in a playoff and wins. So I didn't worry about Bernhard after that. One guy on our team that did very poorly didn't win again for about 3 years. He meant it when he said that emptiness was gone and that he could move forward. Anything you guys would say extra about how the Lord has impacted your life? Most of these people don't know what we do once a week on the regular tour. These guys all want late tea times on Sunday, and you guys get to go to church on Sunday. They don't. They got to go play. So we do a non-denominational fellowship that people come from every denomination and skeptics come to out on the tour. We usually do it the night before it starts. We'll do one tomorrow night, so they are involved in a study, even if they have to play on Sundays. But anything you guys would add?
Well, I would just say Larry's amazing. He was on the regular tour when we were all on the regular tour. But the most amazing thing he does, our Bible study is amazing, and I don't think we could do without it. Bernhard and I are there pretty much every week. But the thing that I love is Larry writes a prayer for us and some verses, for every Sunday. And he has a list of 60 people. And usually, if I don't put my phone on silent, at about 2 in the morning, I'll hear a ding, ding. And, that's when they come through. And, just to read what he writes, he tries to...
I don't sleep.
No. He tries to personalize them. But, to get some kind of, just comfort and it's just so nice to read every morning, and then it gives you something to keep on your mind every day if you're, in the right place or wrong place. So, he kind of knows us all personally and tries to personalize them all, and it's really cool. I just think of it every week. I look forward to the phone dinging at about 2 in the morning so I can read it and then go back to sleep. So
You can turn it off,
I know. I got to remember on Wednesday night or Thursday nights to do that.
I would add, too, that the Bible study / tour fellowship is probably where all of my strongest relationships come from. As an adult, I've been playing pro golf for, my whole life as an adult. Actually, I fear becoming an adult. I really just don't want to ever have to do that. I've seen some of my friends do it. Doesn't look like it would suit me, so...
My wife is hoping at 77 I will soon.
But all of our closest friends come from the tour Bible study, the fellowship, yeah. And it's on the PGA Tour, it's not too distant past for me, but it's a Tuesday night thing, and it's fairly well attended. And then coming out here now, it's usually Thursday nights, and it's great just to, you get together with people that you share a common bond with. And part of that bond, of course, is, you're mostly all believers in Christ, and you want to know a little bit. You're eager to hear more about him and learn and more try to be like him. But there's also just this connection you have with people that are going through the same kind of struggles, that are, in similar walks of life, that are just seeking some brotherhood and sisterhood. And that's really just a sweet part of life.
So, I would just wanted to say becoming a believer has, in a way, drastically changed my priorities, which used to be golf and my wife. Now I'm trying to put God in number one, and my family at number two, and then my job at number three. And it's given me, it's almost like a foundation. So God is the foundation, and I'm building everything on top of that foundation. It's like building a house. If your foundation is rubbish, it's going to crumble, it's going to fall in. Well, God's foundation is the best foundation you can have. And everything I do and say during the day, hopefully, comes from that foundation. I would love to love people the way Jesus loves us. I want to care like Jesus cared. And, there was this bracelet, WWJD, what would Jesus do? What a great reminder. I remember when Payne Stewart, passed away, he just had become a believer, and he wore that bracelet when he made that putt at Pinehurst. And, he finally gave his life to Jesus. And if we would ask ourselves that question more often, what would Jesus do in this situation, in that struggle, in that moment, instead of, being angry at somebody or not forgiving because they don't forgive or any of that. I know it's difficult. It's not easy being a Christian, but it's certainly far better than not knowing Jesus at all.
I looked up your stats today, Bernie. You've won more times on the Champions Tour than anyone. Hale Irwin had won 45 times. Bernhard now beat Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, a couple of guys that play golf, for consecutive years in a row of winning. He tore his Achilles last February playing pickleball. For 3.5 months, he was in recovery. And came out and played, and it came down to the last tournament in a playoff that he made the putt to keep the streak going at the Schwab Cup when he won the Schwab Cup tournament that was 18 years. But I also noticed you came in second 43 times. Jack Nicklaus has that kind of a record, too, the number of wins, even in majors, and the amount of times he's second and third. So what's it like? How does Christ make a difference when you come in second and don't win? Everybody knows what it's like winning. You ought to be ecstatic. How do you handle it with the Lord, Bernie?
Well, I've learned over the years that my identity doesn't come from winning. It doesn't come where I'm on the money list or how many victories or how I finished that week. My identity is that I'm a son of God. He loved me so much that he came to die on the cross for my sins so that I could be part of his family and have eternal life. And that is... I'm worth far more as a son of God than I am whatever I do on my own. So that was a big lesson for me, because there were many years in my life when my identity was, well, how did you finish last week? That's no way to live, because in golf you don't win many tournaments. You lose far more than you win, or you finish whatever. You got 140 guys to play against roughly, and if you win 1 or 2 a year, you've had a good year. So it's a tough game, and it's not a good way to live if you just look back and depend on success. So it was a major breakthrough in my life when I realized, the love of Jesus for me, and that I'm worth so much to him, no matter how I do, whether I do great or bad, doesn't matter. Not to him. Like you always say, play for the audience of one. So I try to play golf for his glory, not for my own glory, or not even for you guys watching out there. So that's how I look at it now.
We're here tonight as the guests of Links players. Derek introduced himself, and Links is one of those places where people that love golf get together and they ask questions, study God's Word, and the last thing we ever want to be a part of is something that pressures you or pushes you in a direction you don't want to go. My hope is tonight, when you come to a place like this, and you hear these guys' life stories, that there's an intrigue that happens to you that you want to say, all right, I may have had the wrong idea about this religious God stuff. And it's not about religion. It's about a relationship with a personal God who loves and cares for each one of us. Now, I know, because I've done hundreds of these, that there are also some people in the room that maybe for the first time the light went on and you went, yeah, I want what these guys have, and would like to have it. And Bernhard, I'd like you to just kind of close us with an opportunity for a person to, if they wanted to pray a prayer after you, they could pray and give their heart to the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know where each and every one of you is at this evening or at this point in time in your life, but in a crowd like this, and I'm just talking about my own experience, there's so much going on. And I started reading the Bible over the last 40 years, and in Romans 6:23 it says, "For the wages of sin is death." And I think you all agree, we've all have sinned. We all have done stuff that we're not proud of, that we shouldn't be doing. And when it says, for the wages of sin is death, doesn't mean you're going to die right now, but it's a spiritual death. It means there's no room in heaven for sin. Sinners can't get there. That's why Jesus had to come and die on the cross as his perfect sacrifice for all our sins, past, present, and future. And then in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, it says, if you believe in your heart that Jesus is who he claims to be and confess it with your mouth, you will be saved. It doesn't say you may be saved. You could be. There's a slim chance or a good chance. It says you will. And God doesn't lie. So if he promised us that we will be saved, that we will have eternal life, we will go to heaven, if we confess it with our mouth and believe it in our heart that Jesus is who he claims to be and that he rose from the grave on the third day. Now I'm going to say a prayer here, which is an acceptance prayer to ask Jesus into your life. If you or feel any of this, what we talked about here tonight, you know, is of interest to you. If you've never given your life to Jesus, let's say you have a heart attack today or tomorrow, or you have a car accident. I mean, God forbid, but it happens all the time. If you've never given your life to Jesus, where are you going to spend eternity? Where are you going to be the rest of time? So this is that opportunity tonight. I'm going to say a prayer. You can say it in your own heart. If you feel led that way, you're not joining a club, you're not joining a church or anything. You're joining the family of God. As I said earlier, Jesus came for that very reason, because we're all born in the sin nature. That's why we have to be born again spiritually to accept Jesus and for our souls to go to heaven. So if any of you feel led to pray this prayer, please bow your heads, and I'll say a prayer, and you can say it in your own heart. Dear Jesus, I know I'm a sinner. I know I need forgiveness, and I'm so grateful that you died on the cross for my sins. I ask you now into my life, and I thank you for forgiving me my sins. I ask you to be my Lord, my Savior, and my friend, and make me into the person that you want me to be. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. And if you haven't felt led to say this prayer with me right now, maybe you contemplate on what we talked about in the next few days and weeks, and the Holy Spirit will show you the way. The good thing is, I hope you said the prayer, and we'll see each other in heaven, because we're going to give free golf lessons in heaven.
And Bernhard knows I need it, as do several others. I think it's on. Is it on? No. We're good. I want to thank again the Martins for allowing us to be here. I want to thank Lynx players. Huh? This one? All right. There, that helps. Well, I thanked the Martins when I didn't have it, but I want to thank Lynx players for inviting us to be here. And I'm serious. There's no obligation when you're going to the Lynx players' studies and stuff. It's a place where you can investigate for yourself and look at it, ask your questions. You don't have to buy anything, sign anything. You can be a part of it. They would love to have you. So I would just encourage you. Derek, where are you, buddy? Come on.
Now, for these guys to spend their time with us tonight, it really is a privilege, and thank you guys for spending your evening with us. And I know many of you here were invited by someone, and we have Lynx Fellowships. As Larry shared, they have their tour fellowship. Well, a lot of you guys are sitting at a table that were invited tonight. And again, talk to them about the Lynx Fellowship. It really is about community and relationships, and that's what we're about. And so we have over 50 fellowships here in Southern California. So if you go to our website, take a look at the QR code, you could find a club that meets weekly. A lot of them meet weekly. Tonight, there's a card on your table. So we have a flag here that's signed by Doug and Stewart and Bernie. And so you guys make sure you fill out the card on your table. And if you guys want to know more about Lynx players, again, fill out the card. And hey, thanks again for the Martins. It's valet parking. Make sure you take care of the guys that bring up your car. And safe travels, and we'll see you again. God bless.
How did they get this?
Well, you guys got to fill out the card. Don't forget to fill out the card and leave it at your table.
Fill out the card, you get a chance at this.
Bring me down, I said, because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness